freaking awesome.
Can we talk about the fact that this historically stupid person, AOC, is calling for the North to invade the South? She wants a bunch of people with piercings and blue hair to invade the South. And I don't know what they're supposed to do, become baristas or something. I don't know. But she wants them to tackle the assault on their voting rights because, a lot of states are now starting to redistrict, something that the Democrat Party have been doing for years. But now Republicans are starting to do it legally. And people like ALC and Hakeem Jeffries and the whole Democrat cabal are pissed because a lot of them are going to lose their jobs. And rightly so, because what have they done in those districts that they represented for years, black, brown, red, and yellow, and those districts are still bombed out, almost like a bomb was dropped. People like Jasmine Crockett, all of those people like Maxine the Mummy Waters, their districts. Look at their districts where they represent black people and brown people and some whites. Look at those districts. They have not progressed under those Democrat leaders. And now Democrats are upset and trying to fearmonger the public and their voters, saying that their votes are being suppressed. No. People are now starting to see that these Democrat-ran districts show no signs of improvement. And maybe, just maybe, Republicans can do a much better job.
I pray to God that's the case. And
all right, yeah, I just wanted to start out with that. I saw that today, searching to update my site, and I saw that, so I wanted to go ahead and share it with you. But here we are on May the 26th in the year of our Lord 2026, and I've got a lot of great information for you tonight. Let me jump over here to my channel, Murtek on Rumble. Let's get into this. My live stream, episode 1929. Hi, Debbie BS. Glad you could join us. All right, let's jump down here and click the Show More button. On the Fringe, I just shared that with you. Dan Bongino, AP for Liberty, Vince on the Bongino Report, and also Wendy Bell. But I do have some shout-outs to give from T.S. Chaff, 123, just started following my channel. L Bridges just started following my channel. I don't know if that's Lloyd Bridges or not. John's Food Stuffs just started following my channel. INHB just started following me. Niray89 just started following me. Future Ghost to FCSM. Future Ghost of CSM. Okay, there we go. Just started following my channel. Sorry about that, but thank you so much, folks, for following my channel. I greatly appreciate that. I hope you're tuned in, and I hope you enjoy the content. All right, Debbie BS reposted my episode 1928. Ken Anung commented on my daily news wrap-up. Debbie BS and Viper Sr. commented on my episode 1928. Y07H commented on my Extra 710D. Debbie BS, Cottonball 31 commented on my Extra 711A. And Debbie BS commented on my Extra 711B and 711C. So thank you very much, folks, for reposting my video and for your comments. I enjoy reading your feedback, and I definitely appreciate your support. So let me give this a thumbs up, and Debbie BS has already given me a comment. She's thumbs up number 3, so thank you very much, Debbie BS. I appreciate that. Okay, well, let's jump over here and see what Dan Bongino has to say in the 2028 Surprise, episode 2522. Let's check him out.
Folks, it was a big weekend. A lot happened yesterday being Memorial Day. We were off. We were off not because we didn't want to do the show, because it's just, I'd rather you spend some time with your family. We love the show, but there are more important things in life. But there was a big news weekend this weekend. I was sitting there and I thought, please don't tell me this is happening again. And it did. Another attack at the White House. The subject in the case that had numerous contacts with the mental health system. This is a reporter live on the air doing a live shot at that Pebble Beach area on the north grounds of the White House where they do all the live press avails. And you can see her response as they hear, I think it was 17th Street in Penn, where if you want to look it up on a Google map or an Apple map or whatever, you can see it's right there. She hears the shots fired. Play that if you got.
President Trump has said a deal is close,
right here.
only for the two sides to remain far apart.
No. I don't blame folks. Shots fired right there. And by the way, remember, a lot of those mics have gated. I'm not an audio guy, but you guys are. They have like gated compressors, right? So you're hearing that, and it's still loud. That's not how that sounded in real life. In other words, if I'm not going to do it, but if I were to scream, you're going to see me scream. You're going to hear an elevation, but you're not going to hear it as it actually sounded because the compressor compresses it. So that was a lot louder. She, of course, did the smart thing and takes cover right away. You want to stand there with gunfire. However, folks, I'll be on Sean Hannity's show tonight talking about this and some other things. This president is obviously I say obviously because the data backs it up, the most threatened U.S. president, former in between, we've ever seen. He is going to require, just a quick takeaway point on this, this president is going to require, we hope he lives a long life after this presidency too, he is going to need presidential level security forever. It's not negotiable. I'm just hoping the next administration, Republican or Democrat, does the right thing. This appears to have been a case of the mental health system. This subject in the case had numerous contacts with the mental health system. The Secret Service does try to categorize people that constantly threaten the president in different categories of threats, class 1, class 2, and class 3. So I don't know where this guy was on that. He probably was a class 3. However, there's just not enough people in the Secret Service to be watching these people all the time. There's just not. I think it's way past time. By the way, I said it, and I know Director Curran's moving in the direction here. They've got to dramatically expand the Secret Service Special Weapons Team. It's known as CAT, Counter Assault Team. It's a SWAT team for the Secret Service. They've got to expand that dramatically, and they got to start using them, I think, even around the White House grounds, where typically that's a uniform division role. They made some adjustments there too, but Donald Trump is just the most threatened figure in modern politics, I think, anywhere in the world. And we've got to meet the moment. We cannot have anything happen to President Trump. So there's my 2 cents on that. Okay, switching gears, because again, a lot happened and we rolled into Tuesday. Got Judge Jeanine coming up. Folks, the Kentucky primary race with Massey was about bigger things than Tom Massey. And we're not going to be talking about this endlessly. However, there is a potential that Tom Massey may come back and run for president. He's already filed to run again in 2028, which is your first congressional seat. And by the way, that's the system. If he thinks he's got ideas to win, good for you. Throw your name back on a ballot. Let the people, that's democracy. It's how it works. No one should be shut out of a system because you don't like them or like their ideas. Let the people decide. People did decide in Kentucky for. However, I bring this up because there are people, you ever see that movie like New Jack City? Like there are these New Jacks who we've just seen them like over the last couple of years. And if we had like a MAGA tent, right? Oh, there we go. Thank you, guys. Thomas Massey for Congress. I filed with the FEC to run for the 2028 House race. I wouldn't be surprised if he runs for president either. But there are these people like that just showed up, the New Jacks in the tent. They insult everybody in the tent. I told you, like they show up at the party, they take a big dump in the punch bowl, and then they wonder why people who have busted their ass for the Republican Party, the conservatarian movement, people who have, stood by and knocked on the doors and done the sweat equity work, they wonder why people get pissed off. Well, this stuff doesn't help, okay? I saw this clip this weekend. This is Andrew Schultz and Charlemagne I don't know. So he calls himself Charlemagne the God or something. Charlemagne, I don't know, whatever. He doesn't really talk much. But this comedian, Andrew Schultz, like this kind of stuff really doesn't help calling the voters of Kentucky, quote, retards. I'm pretty confident like that's really not an effective mechanism, especially when you're the ones who fell for the PSYOP and the concentrated interest cause, not us. It's actually happened. Check this out.
I mean, after seeing these retards in Kentucky vote in this latest, I think it was a primary.
It was a primary.
Congratulations, guys. Like for a long time, I've hated it when people just like, especially like coastal elites, just like shit on, southern states, and they say that they're like dumb and all this other stuff. I hate it. I think it's so stupid. You've never even been to these places. How dare you like throw these, horrible things on these people? And then an election like this comes up and they fucking fall for it. And it's just like, congrats, man. You guys lived up to every single stereotype anybody has ever said about you.
Number one, how do you think it was a primary? Did you guys catch that? Andy, did you catch that? He's like, I think it was a primary. What do you mean you think it was? Election day's in November. Like you didn't, maybe don't, listen, I'm not telling you what to talk about or not talk about. I am the free speech. I put my money and my ass on the line for free speech long before any of these people. I invest in platforms that people get on there, shit on me all the time. Good for you. That's what free speech is about. But what do you mean you think it's a primary? You don't know how elections work? And you're calling the voters of Kentucky retards? Is anyone in the production room saying, is anyone else, they're the retards? Folks, a lot of these people were never part of our movement. I'm just telling you, like, this is a big op. This is a huge op. There is so much foreign money being flushed into the United States to wipe out the MAGA tent from the inside. I'm stunned more people don't pick up on it. And then to accuse other people of being, quote, retards and falling for an op you fell for is really stunning. So Massey may run again in 2028. He's not ruling out the possibility. I'm talking about for president. That's hence the title of the show today. He's already filed to run for Congress. Let's go a little out of order. The one where he says that he's going to have a little issue, though, because on the campaign trail, he's already said, like, if he wins or loses, he's not running it. I mean, people do this all the time. I wouldn't necessarily, nail him on this one. However, he did say he wasn't going to run again, and now he's already filed. So whatever, he's got that to deal with. Check this out.
I have got to get past May 19th. If I lose on May 19th, I am not doing any more government ever. I'm not running for president, not running for governor. It's a sign from God or the people or both that I, should go back to the farm.
All right. Whatever. People say that all the time. However, he was it Meet the Press this weekend with Kirsten Welker, or is it Kirsten Welker? I don't really care, to be honest with you. Was on this weekend and is already dropping hints about a presidential run. Now, hold Braveheart stuff. Before we get there, I'm going to paint for you two scenarios. And I actually think one of them wouldn't be a bad thing. Folks, if you really believe, and I'm quoting someone else, so these are not my words. If you really believe that Kentucky District 4 voters are, quote, retards, and are too stupid, a bunch of hayseeds or whatever stereotype you want to impart upon these amazing Americans who sacrifice and bust their ass and in farms and factories every single day so people can do like comedy shows and things like that. If you really believe they're, quote, retards, then I actually think maybe it's a good thing to make this a national fight. You'll see the clip in a second, but if Tom Massey wants to run on, the president's a pedophile agenda, and he really thinks like Israel's the number one issue for every American out there, and he fell for this psyop because it's not. It's not. There are people who value the upsides of a relationship, understand there are downsides too. I promise you, like, if it's the only thing you care about, and I got a clip coming up about that, you are in the minority of minorities. If you really think this is a national issue, then let's hash it out. So scenario one, Tom Massey runs for president. Let's see how he does. on the Republican primary and yes, Andrew, it will be, in fact, the primary before the general. That's the way these things work. You don't have the primary after the general. All right? So let's hash it out. Other people have run on these agendas before within the Republican Party. And then it's kind of a national referendum. What are you going to do? Call the whole country, quote, retards if he doesn't win? Okay. Second is, if he runs under a third party agenda, it's only to hand the election to the Democrats. That's it. There is no math. I wish it weren't the case. I wish we had, a healthier Republican Party. I'm not telling you the Republican Party's been cured of all its ills in the MAGA era. I get it. However, there is no math for that. If you don't get to 270 because there's a third party ticket splitter in the Electoral College, the race goes to the House. And in the House, there are not enough third party independent members to sway the election. It's going to be a Republican or a Democrat. That's it. So that scenario is just handing it to the Democrats. You're just handing it to them. Here he was, Tom Massey, on Kristen Welker's show this weekend, kind of hinting at the possibility of even running for president in 2028. We'll see what happens. Anybody can do it. You want to try. But I think we do need to have this national fight right now. Check this out.
I will not rule out anything. And right now, I'm not going to rule in anything. Look, I've spent the last 5 days on my farm with my grandkids and my cattle and my peach trees, and it's a pretty nice life. I don't know if I want to screw that up again. I've been in Congress 14 years fighting. Every hour that passes, I get decompressed a little bit more. It's like coming up from the bottom of the ocean. And I'll take some time and decide what's next. But I think I will stay engaged in some way or shape. Maybe it's from the outside.
Folks, the problem here, I've tried to explain this, and people just don't get. I don't know, do you believe in receipts or not? I know if you're in my audience, you do. I know it bothers people who hate my guts, and believe me, I fully align with the Aunt Jane theory of life. God rest her soul. That was my godmother, obviously my mother's sister. Self-praise stinks. However, numbers are numbers. We have probably the largest MAGA podcast out there. We just do. So if this movement was so dead as a doornail, how come you can't build a bigger audience than this audience? And I say that because every day I see these things with these little half-assed 2-bit failed podcast people. This guy's crashing out, that guy's crashing. The only person crashing out is you. I didn't lose. My candidate won. I don't even know what you're talking about. You fell for the op. And the op is a simple one. You made your whole campaign about this foreign influence or money trying to pump into American politics that the only issue you should care about all the time is Israel. That's it. I don't know how many times do I have to tell you, go down to your local deli, bodega, supermarket, quickie mart, whatever the hell, find a place in The Simpsons, go in there and tap the random Republican voter or Democrat, it doesn't even matter, and ask them what the number one issue is. You're going to find in the real world that you were the one who fell for this op. This is what I mean. I saw this debate.
I'm going to go ahead and pause this there. We'll get into this in my daily news wrap-up because I will include this video in there. But, yeah, he always gives good information, and that's why I like to share him. Let me click on this Rumble link here. The Democrats, they're losing it. They really, really are. I mean, they just make stuff up as they go along. All right, this video does come from the Dan Bongino show. This is the video I shared with you. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right. Speaking of Donald Trump and his influence and everything he does is so horrible, let's jump over here and look at some early results. 20.18% of the voters have been counted in Texas. Looks like Ken Paxton is leading 61% to 38%. Huh. Yeah, I thought Donald Trump didn't have any influence over the voters. Okay? And I'll tell you some of these other people like John Thune, because he'll be coming up in 28, and God willing, and the Secret Service does their job, Donald Trump will be around. And I'm sure he's not going to have very many good things to say about John Thune. All right. So that asshole better get his ass in gear and start doing what he's supposed to be doing instead of dragging his feet slower than any snail in history. Phew. Unbelievable. Okay, let's jump back here. Here we go. And Powers 56 joined us in the chat, and so did Schaefer and Susie Pole 16. Thank you very much. Powers, I don't recall seeing your chat before. Are you new to my channel? Mertech Daily News Update. All right, let's get down here and see what AP for Liberty has to say. Hasan Piker had it coming, a message for all commies in America. All right, well, let's check it out.
Discuss that trip with Hasan Piker, and so would we. Finally, it's on 5 Liberty. Hope you had AEs. Quite sure.
Because of that song. And they have that song, the gay national anthem, if you remember. That's why I did so well with the gay vote, I think, because of that song. I did great with the gay vote, better than any Republican's ever done by far. But my wife, the first lady, very elegant woman. That's why people love the women went to see that movie 15 times. And also, darling.
Did Trump do very well with the gay vote? I'm not quite sure. Good morning. Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and we're on the For Liberty Network. Misha Swisky's here, Amy J. Easley, Joni Rankin, Drew Van Runkle, Relaxium McGroin, Mertech. Who else do we need? Everybody that we need looks like they're here. Don't forget to click that like button. I hope you had a wonderful holiday weekend and that you got to spend some time with family and to remember the fallen, those who sacrificed everything to give us liberty here in the United States. Well, the law that outlawed communism in America is still on the books. Many people have never heard of this. It passed 85-0, the Communist Control Act, but nobody has ever enforced this law. Meanwhile, the most prominent Marxist political commentator in the country, Hasan Piker, just got a federal subpoena about his little vacation to Havana. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. And he went on a live stream to tell 2.8 million followers that it is, quote, not great. I'm Austin Peterson. This is the Wake Up America show. We're starting this show this morning with the Communist Control Act of 1954, why it's time to bring it back, enforce it, who wrote it, why it passed unanimously, but then why no administration ever since has ever touched it, and why I think the argument for enforcing it today is stronger than when Eisenhower signed it in August of 1954. From there, we're going to get into Hasan Piker, self-described Marxist, like a lot of Marxists, $2.7 million home in West Hollywood. He's got 2.8 million Twitch followers. And then his March trip to Havana, that was part of a convoy built by 23 Marxist organizations that have ties to the Chinese Communist Party. So, and St. Selma is here as well. We didn't want to miss them, or Bruiser as well. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. So, do you guys all remember this? Hasan was live streaming this whole Cuban operation from a 5-star generator-powered hotel, while the Cuban people who were outside the window were on hour 19 of a blackout. And he told his audience at the time, the Cubans were fine. People are partying in the effing streets, he said. Well, the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control would like to discuss that trip with Hasan Piker, and so would we. It's going to be a great show. Camellia is going to join us this morning. Camellia is going to join us here to talk about the Libertarian National Convention, which happened this last weekend in Grand Rapids. And the biggest controversy was that somebody asked delegates to wear shoes and clothes. Well, the party board was deadlocked on the question of whether or not they should ask people to wear clothing. There was a person in a one-piece swimsuit, people dressed up like fairies running around. The LP has existed for 52 years, and they've never elected a single federal candidate. Camellia and I will work through whether those things are connected. And Jeremy Kaufman, chair of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, joins us to talk about what happened inside this weekend. There were stolen materials, violence, security footage, a suspect identified by LP national staff, the man who beat Kaufman, the chairmanship, took to the stage in a shirt that I cannot read on this program. It's so disgusting and explicit. And then Jeremy Kaufman got kicked out of the convention, and the National Libertarian Party kicked the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire itself entirely out of the party. It's a giant poop show. We'll talk about it this morning. So let's get into it. Okay. Don't forget, we do have bonus content for you today. And today's bonus content is some of the best bonus content. My favorite unofficial founding father, a mini documentary today. We've been doing these 250th anniversary of the United States profiles, biopics of some of the heroes of the American Revolution. And today's hero is Thomas Paine. So if you'd like to see today's mini documentary, instead of watching the commercials that we have for this show, then let's unlock the bonus content. A Rumble rant. If we hit $100 raised in Rumble rants, that'll unlock it. But you can also go to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. And if you hit forlibertyshop.com this morning, get yourself a nice little 1776 bifold wallet. All of the purchases that you make at the show and Rumble rants, everything goes to add up together. So we'd love to have you guys unlock today's bonus content. It's going to be great. And if we hit 150, of course, that unlocks the game show mode, and we'll all compete for real prizes in the gift shop. Are we ready? Let's go.
Please, President Trump, I'll gulp your Cheeto dry. Just let me stay in America.
For those who know. All right. So let's go back in time to August 24th, 1954. The temperature in Washington that day had hit 94 degrees. The Senate had been in session before sunrise, and Dwight Eisenhower signed a bill that the United States government has spent the last 70 years pretending that it never passed. Okay. The Communist Control Act passed the Senate 85-0. And this is the most lopsided vote of the post-war era and the most thoroughly buried vote of that era. It came from, so the bill didn't originate with some backbench Republican who was angling for headlines. It came from Hubert Humphrey, who was the senator from Minnesota, future vice president of the United States under Lyndon Johnson, the man that the Democratic Party spent a generation building their mythology around. Well, Humphrey was tired of being called soft on communism, so he wrote the bill himself and then dared his colleagues to vote no. Well, two of them did, but then everybody else got in line. And the legal argument behind the Communist Control Act was precise. It was that a political party is a domestic organization that competes for power within the constitutional framework of the United States where this operates. So the Communist Party of USA was none of those things. It received its direction from Moscow. And at its peak, and its members at the time were coordinating with the Communist International. So at its peak in the 1940s, the Communist Party of USA, it had 75,000 members embedded across the State Department. The labor movement, there were communists in Hollywood, and of course, Hiss, who was the State Department official who helped design the architecture of the post-war international order, was a Soviet agent. And he helped so Julius and Ethel Rosenberg passed nuclear weapon secrets to the Soviets while American soldiers were dying in Korea. The communist infiltration of American institutions was a documented, prosecuted, convicted fact. The paper trail ran through federal courtrooms. It wasn't just newspaper editorials. This was real law, real legislation, and real battles of foreign influence from the 1950s. Right? So what the act did, the Communist Control Act did, was that it stripped the Communist Party of every legal right that American law extends to functioning organizations. So the Communist Party lost its rights to hold bank accounts, own property, sound familiar, enter contracts, access the courts, or to appear on any ballot in the country at any level of government. And Eisenhower's signing of this statement was specific that the new legal category of communist infiltrated organizations would give rank and file union members the tools to legally remove communist leadership from their own unions. So the men who voted 85-0 on this bill, they understood something that the subsequent generations we've all managed to forget, which is that there's a categorical difference between a citizen who holds unpopular opinions and a group that collaborates with foreign governments. Okay, there is a humongous difference between those two things, especially when that organization is dedicated to the destruction of the United States. The First Amendment protects the first group of people. The Communist Control Act addressed the second group of people. Okay, the problem with the Communist Control Act is that nobody enforced it. And that is the story of the Communist Control Act. From 1954 to today, the Department of Justice looked at the law, decided that the constitutional litigation of this would be unpleasant, so then they just put it in a drawer. The Warren Court spent the 1960s dismantling the broader architecture of anti-communist legislation piece by piece. But then by 1968, Congress had begun repealing the registration requirements from the companion McCarran International Security Act. Everybody heard of McCarran International Airport? Well, by 1993, most of the remaining provisions were gone. The Communist Control Act survived those repeals. It's still codified in Title 50 of the United States Code right now, but without a single prosecution or the Supreme Court ruling on its constitutionality. So at that time, then, the Communist Control Act essentially has become a ghost in the Federal Register. The assumption was that the Soviet collapse in 1991 settled the question. Communism lost. History was over, right? And the ideology was supposed to lose with it. But what nobody tracked was where it went, what happened to this when the flag went down. The New York Times, though, they tracked it actually. They weren't just alarmed by what they found. Listen to this. In 1989, while crowds were tearing down the Berlin Wall, the New York Times ran a piece under the headline, "The Mainstreaming of Marxism in U.S. Colleges." And their Moscow correspondent wrote it, who was a journalist who had spent 4 years watching Marxism collapse in the Soviet Union, and then came home to find it flourishing here on American campuses. Marxist professors, she wrote, had, quote, virtually completed their transformation from brash, beleaguered outsiders to assimilated academic insiders. The New York Times framed it as a success story. The class conflict framework that powered Soviet communism didn't disappear when the wall fell. It just rebranded. And what came out of the other side was, you guessed it, critical theory, intersectionality, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. The oppressor-victim binary that Lenin used to justify the liquidation of the kulaks was restaged as corporate HR policy. You strip the red flag and then you replace it with the language of social justice. And that same engine runs today. Meanwhile, the Communist Party of USA never went away. Today, they claim 20,000 members on their mailing list, but The Guardian put their actual active membership at somewhere around 5,000 in 2024. They had candidates on the ballot in at least 4 states in 2025. Their Detroit club published a statement this year calling Trump's election results troubling and declared that fascism must be defeated. In July of 2024, a faction broke from the Communist Party and founded the American Communist Party, which is Marxism-Leninism as their stated ideology. Now, Xi Jinping is thought of as their specific reference point that they cite, with members currently holding elected office. 70 years after Congress voted 85-0 to outlaw the movement, the movement's ideological heirs are now on a ballot for you to vote for. Now, the argument for reviving the Communist Control Act has nothing to do with relitigating the 1950s, right? And everything to do with applying 70-year-old legal logic to a threat that is larger, better funded, and more operationally present today than what the 83rd Congress was looking at then. So the foundational premise of the Communist Control Act was that an organization taking operational direction from a foreign communist government is not entitled to the legal status that of a domestic political party. And I think that argument is more defensible today than it was when Hubert Humphrey wrote the bill, because the Chinese Communist Party is a more sophisticated, more financially entrenched, and a more tactically aggressive foreign adversary than the Soviet Union ever managed to be inside the United States. The House Oversight Committee conducted a government-wide investigation across 25 federal sectors and found that the Biden administration was dangerously behind in combating CCP infiltration. So federal agencies weren't just failing to stop the Chinese Communist Party. The report found that many in the government were actively placating it. The House Select Committee on Strategic Competition with China documented CCP-directed cyber espionage targeting congressional staff on classified investigations that were being made. So in other words, the Chinese Students and Scholars Association operating on American university campuses, we had to kick one out here in Missouri because the Confucius Institute here in Columbia, Missouri, 45 minutes north of Jeff City here where I live, they had so many spies on campus here in Missouri that we had to shut down an entire branch of this institution because we were being overrun with Chinese communist spies. They were described.
Pause that there. I will include this in my daily news wrap-up so you'll get to hear the rest of this. I like Austin Peterson. I mean, he really gives you some good information. I mean, he has kind of some quirky things on the side to keep your attention, but he definitely gives out some great information. Let me go ahead and click on the Rumble link here. I'm running a little long, but show you that this video here does come from AP for Liberty. This is the video I shared with you. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here. And let's see what Vince on the Bongino report has to say. The world is watching.
Deal. All right. Okay, everybody. Let's talk through some of the details of what we're learning right now about an emerging Iran deal. All right, so we'll take a close look, kind of where things are headed right now, based on what I've been hearing this weekend. It's kind of fascinating. Now, you will, of course, those of you who've been checking in on the news a little bit, you will know that in the midst of negotiating with these maniacs, we're also blowing them up. So this is Complicated business, very complicated business. Here is the reporting this morning from Fox News. Take a look. The United States military carried out self-defense strikes in southern Iran on Monday, targeting missile launch and Iranian boats in the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, because they were trying to. CENTCOM says the strikes were launched after Iranian forces were spotted laying mines in the strait and a missile site that had targeted U.S. warplanes during an already fragile ceasefire in the region. And they've got, little helpful photos of the fact that we're, attacking these idiots and the stuff that we're blowing up. So that's great. Thank you to CENTCOM for blowing up the bad guys. But that's in the midst of these negotiations because yesterday there was apparently some very intense negotiations gone in Qatar. The Iranian delegation was there and trying to hammer out some of the details of what kind of deal they might reach with the United States of America. And that's where my conversation this weekend came in. I was one of, you will see across the internet. I'm not going to disclose anybody who was there who doesn't want to disclose that they were there, but there are lots of people that were there. These are a lot of type conservative media figures you'd probably be aware of. People are kind of in the business that I'm in. Got a briefing from a senior administration official, many of whom shared some of the summaries of what we heard. And I would say that I left this call very, very encouraged, very, very encouraged about where things are headed, how a deal would be structured, and how we're not going to in any way have something like Obama had. Remember the pallets of cash and just letting Iran get away with nuclear enrichment? None of that is going to happen with the Trump administration and this team. None. So don't for a moment. Let me just warn you right now. If you see anybody suggesting that President Trump is engaged in a sellout of the American people, that we're going to allow a nuclear Iran to continue, this is worse than the Obama deal, that's disinformation. They're lying to you. Do not fall for it. Do not fall for it. So let me, if I could, I'll just take you through some of the top lines here of what we have from the administration, what they're working on. And again, this sourcing is impeccable. I'm not in any way doubtful of what they're up to. Here's the top line. No dust, no dollars. No dust, no dollars. Now, I think you can basically suss out what that means. Other calls, I know that they were using the phrase no dust, no deal. But fundamentally, what they want is all of the enriched nuclear material turned over and removed from the Iranian borders. Done. Out. And if they do that, that is a predicate to get some, not all, some sanctions relief. Because what kind of leverage do we have over the Iranians right now? Well, we have Operation Economic Fury. We have them in a complete headlock economically. And if you want any of that pressure to even be slightly relieved, you will start doing things that the President of the United States demands here in order to ensure our long-term national security. So no dust, no dollars. Iran will not get access to a single dime unless they actually produce results. Now, we do not have a memorandum of understanding signed yet. There was some conversation over the weekend that it could happen today. It's about to happen. It's very imminent. And the message that I'm hearing is it's not happening. It didn't happen yesterday, of course. It didn't happen Sunday when I got briefed on this subject. And it's unlikely to happen today. These things move slowly, and that's for a reason. The Iranians are keeping their gay, deformed supreme leader as far away from American and Israeli detection as they think they can possibly keep him. They're trying to hide him. Now, my guess is, this is a wild guess. We know exactly where this gay, deformed supreme leader is. We know where he's at, but it doesn't really matter in the end. Fundamentally, it takes a while in terms of our communications to get to him. And so there's a 4 to 5 day lag time on even changing very subtle language, little bits of language in an emerging deal. That's actually what's going on. This is the challenge here. And so the President of the United States is been very patient here through this very slow, almost like messenger pigeon-like process to get a deal set up. But he's doing it because he really wants to end this conflict in a way that benefits the United States of America, gets rid of the nukes in Iran, reopens the global economy, brings oil prices down very rapidly. These are the things that they're focused on. And so right now they're just waiting for responses here from the Iranians. And it does take a while. It does take a while. So the Trump administration does believe that they are days away from a memorandum of understanding with the regime. Here's how it would work. If we get a memorandum of understanding, the second that occurs, the Iranians pull away from interfering in any way with the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is immediately open upon the signing of the MOU. From there, it begins another 30 days or so of negotiation about how exactly to remove all of the nuclear dust, to get rid of it. You got to figure out the detailed mechanisms by which they would give up that highly enriched stockpile of nuclear dust. And they would negotiate over a certain period of time, they say, probably around 30 days. 30 days. And then at the conclusion of that, if they can stick the landing on that phase 2, where they negotiate how this is all removed and we start getting it out, and we want to sign a real deal, at that moment where they signed a grand deal, then you get a very senior level administration official to be present for a very public signing ceremony. Now, theoretically, that could be the president of the United States, but we don't know the answer to that just yet. It could be the president. And I'd venture a guess that the president wants to sign a deal like that, especially if he can resolve a problem that's been enduring for over 47 years now. So if he can do that, he'll want to. But again, there's a lot of moving parts here, but this is how this thing is ramping up. Now, they say that 95% of the deal is done with Iran, 95%. But, quote, literally changing words requires occasionally days of deliberation within their system. We're mostly there. We feel like we've got a commitment. These are quotes I'm reading to you now. Quote, we're mostly there. We feel like we've got a commitment on the enriched stockpile. We feel like we've got a commitment on the Strait of Hormuz. And we're haggling a little bit over some of the language. This deal would open the strait and it would end Iran's long-term nuclear ambitions. So step one is that they open the straits, the United States lifts the blockade. That gives the world economy some breathing room. And Iran, commits to giving up their highly enriched material. The strait opens up the minute we sign the MOU. Step two, then you figure out the mechanism, the detailed mechanism by which they give up the highly enriched stockpile. You negotiate that over a certain period of time, probably 30 days. Now, how do the sanctions work? Well, right now, the United States and a bunch of other countries have very punishing sanctions on Iran. And one of the things, if I just take you through history, the way this has worked, is when President Trump was in office the first time, Trump 45, he imposed all sorts of meaningful sanctions and restrictions on the Iranians. The problem is when Biden came into office, his team allowed Iran to evade the sanctions just in an out-of-control way. So Iran really was not being held to any sort of real punishing standard by Biden's team, who allowed them to export all sorts of oil and get away with it and not have those sanctions truly enforced. So now that President Trump is back in office, the sanctions are back on and they're being enforced entirely. And in fact, the blockade itself, the American-led blockade, allowed the Trump administration to accelerate the economic damage that it wants to do to Iran, the punitive damage that we are doing to Iran in order to bring them to heel. Okay.
Good information there. I wanted to share that with you, give you an update on what's going on with Iran. And, you know, this is a very delicate process. I mean, these people that are heading up Iran, the leadership there, they aren't into negotiations. You know, they're into, human bombs. They can be with a bunch of virgins. I don't know how many that they say they'll be with, but it's, so it's very, very difficult to negotiate with people like that. And again, I've said this before, the conflict in the Middle East has been going on for millennia, not just decades, centuries, millennia, thousands of years. Okay? So, if Donald Trump can get these people to come to the table, It's going to be utterly amazing. Let me click on this Rumble link here and show you that this
Bring them to
video
you.
does come from Vince, from the Bongino report. I did give him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. This video will be in my daily news wrap-up so you can see the rest of it. All right, let's jump back here. Okay, GP Wolco01 has given us a comment. I greatly appreciate that. Okay, let's slide down here. 72 virgins. Thank you very much. 72. Wow. You know, 2 or 3 would be fine for me, okay? 72? I don't know. Okay, but at any rate, Wendy Bell Radio, Lone Star Standoff. And we see what the Lone Star Standoff with a 62 to 38, the vote count going to Paxton. But let's take a listen to Wendy Bell and see what she has to say right after her Pledge of Allegiance here.
I remember learning about the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. when I was a little girl. And it was always on my bucket list of things to do, to go watch them bloom in the spring, because the pictures were just magnificent. And on my 40th birthday, Joe took the boys and me to Washington, D.C. And you roll the dice. Got to plan a trip. You book it. You have no idea what the weather is going to be like in D.C. Is this the time it's going to bloom in late March? Is it going to be mid-April? What's it going to be? We literally went over my 40th birthday, and they bloomed on that day. They were the most extraordinary sight I had seen in a long time. If you've not gone to Washington, D.C. during the springtime blooming of those cherry blossoms, my goodness. While we were there, we went to Arlington National Cemetery. I've been several times. I was lucky enough to go in the 8th grade on a class trip, and I was one of 2 students in the class who was selected to hold on to the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns and place that wreath in front of that tomb. It has stayed with me ever since. It's interesting when you have little kids, because the twins weren't yet 3. And we had the 5 boys, 10 down to 3. And you pull up at the cemetery and you literally have to like tram in. It's very big, beautiful. And I don't even think I had the opportunity to tell my kids how I expected them to behave. We told them where we were going. We told them what it was. And it was weird. It was like the minute we walked in through the turnstile, everybody seemed to get it without being told. These are the greatest heroes in our country. And they died so that you could be here with us today. They didn't goof around. Bob and Chris weren't poking at each other. Stop! Right? It was like in those 2 hours, everybody got it. And I don't think anybody really said much. Well, something happened yesterday at Arlington National Cemetery that reminds me to not get caught up in the noise of the negativity that we see so commonly on social media. Not be frustrated by the things that tend to take the most oxygen and snuff out the good, sweet stuff in life. And it was something very simple when you think about it. It was a woman who wanted a little bit of help. And what she needed help with was visiting her husband's grave. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. She's from Arkansas. He died in 2007 in Iraq. And she merely asked if anybody out there is going to be at Arlington and you could stop by my husband's grave. He's in section 60. If you could go and put your hand on it, maybe take a picture, I'd be grateful because I can't go this year. So this is how Newsweek tells this story. We're going to play some video here in just a second. A widow's Memorial Day appeal on social media prompted dozens of strangers, along with senior Trump administration officials, to pay tribute at the grave of her husband at Arlington National Cemetery. Cheryl Ann Shaw, whose husband, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Alan W. Shaw, was killed in Iraq in 2007. She asked users on X if anyone visiting Arlington over the holiday weekend would stop by his grave in section 60 and maybe share a video or a photo. It's probably a long shot, she wrote, but if anybody happens to be in D.C. this weekend and plans on visiting Arlington, I would love to see a fresh photo of my husband's grave in section 60. She had no idea what kind of response she would get. It spread in from across social media, with users posting photos, depositing flowers at Staff Sergeant Shaw's grave, and tributes from the cemetery throughout Memorial Day weekend. Conservative influencer Nick Sorter, we've had him on the show multiple times, shared videos and photos from Arlington. He shared this photo or video we're showing you right now as he went to the grave and laid roses on. And then he put out, man, the patriot up, and a died. According to Nick, Tulsi Gabbard, right, outgoing director of national intelligence, left a challenge coin at the gravesite, which Nick said would be sent to the Shaw's family or to Shaw's family. Beautiful. The scale of the response was unexpected, with many ex-users sharing photos of Shaw's grave with messages for the family. Pete Hegseth and his family showed up. Here's a photo of it. Pete and his wife and his 4 children laying flowers on the grave. Tulsi Gabbard shared her own tribute. This man who died, who was Alan W. Shaw. He was born in November 1975 in Little Rock, joined the U.S. Marine Corps in 1998, was assigned to Camp Pendleton, California. He served time, honorably discharged 4 years later from the Marines. He proceeded to attend the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, married his wife, Cheryl, in 2003. And the next year, 2004, he joined the U.S. Army. So he was a Marine who then went to join the Army. And he didn't just serve one tour, he served 2. And it was on his second tour in Iraq when he was killed during combat operations. He left behind his wife and his 3 children, Austin, Jordan, and Davin. They'd only been married 4 years. They had 3 kids. And he was killed. Writing about her husband on X, Shaw said he was the funniest person I've ever known, loud in the best way, the kind of man whose presence filled a room the second he walked into it. His laugh was always genuine, and people were naturally drawn to him. After all of these videos and photos and tributes poured into her one X request, if anybody happens to be there and you happen to be by section 60, can you find him? And let me know. She wrote this. Last night, I made a simple request on X. I asked if anybody visiting Arlington National Cemetery for Memorial Day would stop by Alan's grave and leave a photo for our family. Think about it. His kids never really knew him. What happened next honestly caught me off guard. By this afternoon, dozens of Americans from all walks of life had made the walk to Section 60 to visit Staff Sergeant Alan W. Shaw. Veterans, families, complete strangers, people who'd never met Alan but chose to honor him anyway. For one day on social media, people put aside the constant noise and the negativity and came together for something bigger than themselves. My notifications filled with photos and kind messages, prayers, and stories from people honoring not just Alan, but so many of our fallen heroes. I don't think people fully understand what moments like this mean to Gold Star families. The fear is never just losing them, it's losing them slowly over time as the world moves on and fewer people remember their name. But today showed me that Alan will never be forgotten. After watching years of watching social media reward some of the worst parts of humanity, today gave me a reminder that the good is still out there too. Thank you to every single person who stopped by to visit Alan today, said his name, shared his story, or took a moment to honor the fallen. This right here is the America Alan knew and loved enough to fight and die for. And today, y'all showed us that it's still here and it's still worth fighting for. That is the America I love. When we come back on the Wendy Bell radio program, did you hear how Minneapolis's mayor, Jacob Fry, decided to celebrate the Memorial Day holiday? Oh, let's just go cold 180 from where we are right now. I'm going to pour cold water on your head, okay? Right after this on the Wendy Bell radio.
All right, let's go ahead and get this up here.
The people.
It's magic, you know.
Well, if you felt good in the monologue, I'll tell you, Jacob Fry just pooed all over you, okay? Minneapolis's mayor decided to use Memorial Day not to talk about the people who didn't come home. And, you know, we don't know them all, but we owe them all. That's not how he felt yesterday. Jacob Fry, Minneapolis mayor, decided he was going to remember George Floyd on Memorial Day. You know, that fine American patriot, the guy who went and sacrificed his life for the betterment of everybody. Oh, that's right. No, he wasn't. He was a drug addict. He was a drug addict and a criminal and a thug, and he died because he made a million bad decisions, and they all kind of went on one day with that elixir of drugs that was pulsing through his body. And as much as the left has tried to tell us that it's all about cops, it was a white cop that killed him, it's all about racism, cocksuck. Really? Really? Jacob, you limp-wristed jerk of a human being, right? I don't even have to tell you what the guy said, but everybody and his brother who saw Jacob Fry put a picture of himself. It wasn't a flag. It wasn't a gold star. It wasn't a eagle. It wasn't like Love America. It was a picture of him wearing a mask, taking a knee by George Floyd's casket. That is your mayor of Minneapolis. And you got to love Rob Finnerty over at Newsmax because he was like, brother, you are such an absolute idiot and so off base here, babe. I want you to hear how his face almost melted off last night on his show.
These days are always so challenging and tough for Democrats. Whenever there is patriotism involved, nobody said this. I was thinking about it all day. They seem to have more and more trouble with this every single year. Days where there's love for country involved, which is why the left are now trying to turn Memorial Day into a day to remember St. George Floyd. Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, tweeting this today on Memorial Day, quote, "Today, we remember George Floyd, who was murdered by a former Minneapolis police officer 6 years ago." Actually, Jake, no, we definitely do not. We don't care about George Floyd. We have no interest in honoring a drug addict who violently resisted arrest for more than 10 minutes, just minutes after allegedly committing a crime himself. These are the facts of the case. Today, we don't honor George Floyd. In fact, today, we don't even think about George Floyd. Today, we honor the people who gave their lives so that George Floyd could get high on fentanyl and crystal meth that day and then try to pass a fake $20 bill. And then to avoid getting arrested, he resisted arrest violently for almost 10 minutes because George Floyd is not an American hero. And it doesn't matter how many murals they put up of George Floyd or how many statues. There's nothing heroic about George Floyd. This was not a good person. Because today is not about him, it's about this right here. Did you see this? A soldier standing at post in the pouring rain at the tomb of the unknown soldier in Washington. While Kamala was enjoying her long weekend in Malibu, she and Dougie just bought an $8 million house out there. This is what this weekend is really all about. And something tells me that that soldier right there was not high on fentanyl like George Floyd. But Democrats just can't seem to deal with anything that has anything to do with patriotism because that's too offensive to them now. And they think they're going to win in November. They're not.
I couldn't agree more with you. Today, we remember George Floyd, Fry wrote on X, who was murdered by a former Minneapolis police officer 6 years ago. That moment changed our city forever. In subsequent posts, he wrote that the death of Floyd forced the city to, quote, confront painful truths about race, policing, inequity, and trust. No, you know what, Jake? You know what it told us about? It told us about drug addiction and rampant lawlessness and Democrats who refuse to enforce any kind of order and what it's like to live in a blue hellscape. That, Jake, that's what we got. That's what we saw. The man that Al Sharpton had to accompany on a private jet to 4 different freaking funerals in a golden casket. George Floyd, whose face is all over these toxic blue cities. George Floyd, who some ne'er-do-well nincompoop artist decided to make a giant fro pick for as some symbol of art. That is the guy whose eggs you're going to put in the basket. Okay, Jake, this is the difference between crazy and loving America. Yesterday was about nothing other than Americans coming together in their own way, with family, neighbors, doing things that they enjoy doing because people, more than 1 million of them, died that we had that privilege, so we could do what we want. That is the biggest egg laid yesterday. And I'm not surprised. When we come back on the Wendy Bell radio program, let's talk about this, ladies and gentlemen. All gas to the finish, Texas. It's the Lone Star Showdown, the big Senate runoff race. How's it looking? Next on the Wendy Bell Radio Network.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and pause that there. This video will be in my daily news wrap-up playlist, so you can watch it. The rest of it there. Let's jump over here and let me show you.
Did you hear how many
does come from Wendy Bell Radio? I am following her channel. I've given her a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. And all right, GP Wolco01 said Paxton won in Texas. Good job. All right, get that rhino out of the Senate. Unbelievable. And you know, as Wendy's saying, they're just crazy. They're going to celebrate or memorialize George Floyd? What, they didn't get the story? The real truth? Or they just don't want to hear the truth? I mean, I heard the real truth like 2 or 3 days after in the media, and the narrative was like, are you kidding me? This guy's a drug addict. He died from fentanyl. Yeah, the cop may have had his knee on his neck, but that's not why he died. But they just kept on. The cop actually went to jail. Unbelievable. They wouldn't allow the coroner to give his testimony to say he didn't die from a neck injury. He died from fentanyl. Unbelievable. All right. Well, let me go ahead and copy this chat while I'm here into a comment, so it will be a permanent part of this video. There we go. And remind you folks that these videos I shared with you are videos that come directly from the producers. I've got the links to the videos in the description box, along with the links to the producer's channel in the description box. Okay, these videos that I've shared with you are videos that I've posted over here on Murtech.com. Let me go ahead and pull that screen up. Hang on just 1 second. There we go. All right. Where I have over 40 no nonsense, common sense, logic, and truth videos, kind of information that, you're not going to get from the mainstream media. This is your one-stop shop for truth. I would like to share all of it with you, but unfortunately I don't have the time to do so, and that's why I've put together my daily news wrap-up playlist, where I have, it says 18 videos here, about 10 or 11 hours worth of great information. Here's the Wendy Bell radio and the Dan Bongino video. And also I have AP for Liberty in here and the Bongino report with Vince. We'll get these all sorted out. But in the meantime, go ahead and take a break. Grab a cup of coffee and a donut, or a sandwich and a soft drink, or maybe even a nice glass of wine and some cheese, and meet me back here in about 15 or 20 minutes, and we'll get this going. But in the meantime, I do want to thank you for being here. Hopefully, I'll get to see you again later, and may God bless.